Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the Zenith Pilot Big Date Automatic. You can see the stainless steel El Primero powered Pilot's timepiece on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this watch with additional accessories included in the sale, high resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this Zenith Pilot Big Date Automatic powered by El Primero caliber 4010. Now you can see on my wrist 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference. This is not one of the ungainly huge Zenith Pilot's watches. Unlike some of those larger montres d'Aéronef, this watch is 42 millimeters in stainless steel and nicely sized with a versatile coloration and a unique mesh bracelet rarely seen on these watches. Now it's 42 millimeters across the round of the case, not including chronograph pushers or crown. It's not particularly thick or thin. At 13.8 millimeters with a nicely sloped conical bezel, it will slide underneath most dress cuffs. And from lug to lug, it's 50.3 millimeters across the wrist. This model debuted at Bezel World in 2012, and I'm happy to say it is aged incredibly gracefully. Many models issued before and since from Zenith have felt very much of their time, and I fear may begin to look that way as time passes. This watch, in the Pilot style to be sure, but distinctly Zenith in its engineering, is going to look just as good in 20, 30, or 40 years. Now the watch is nicely proportioned in relation of lugs to case, bezel to dial, length to width, thickness to lug span. Everything about the watch is well chosen. Let's talk a little bit about the ergonomics, because though large, you can see that it does not have particularly lengthy lugs. They're tightly downward curved. They're also relatively short cropped as they exit the flank of the case. Now this bracelet can pull straight down around the tight curve of a small wrist, so I would say you should be able to wear this watch on a wrist as small as 14.5 centimeters in circumference, and again for reference my wrist is 16 and oval in profile. The bracelet's impressive. You can see the individual collars for the through fittings for the pin buckle. You can see how thick it is in profile and how perfectly finished, all to a high polish from every angle the individual links are. It is silky and incredibly flexible, and you can see innumerable small perforations between the links to allow the wrist to breathe on a hot day. It's also substantial. Nothing about it feels flimsy or susceptible to damage. Straight bars in the vintage style. It's paired with a full deployant clasp. You're really getting a lot with this remarkable bracelet, including what must be considered one of the most unique strap minders I've ever seen, as the bracelet really does sort of thread the needle between a strap and a bracelet, an intriguing hybrid of the two that's as unique as Rolex's own hybrid of strap and bracelet, the Oyster Flex. This one, however, featuring a twin-trigger actuated deployant clasp. It's a luxurious appointment for an unusual accessory that I happen to love, and which sets this watch apart distinctly from similar watches made by companies from IWC to Longines. Now you'll also notice the case finish is surprisingly nuanced. Satin finish on its flank, there's a small polished bevel to the lug, and the bevel nicely bends around the arc from the hoods to the flats of the lug in profile. You'll also note the high polish between the lugs on each side, an exclusive finish not seen in the profiles, although the flank is punctuated by traditional rectangular rounded lozenge style high polish pushers on the 3 o'clock side. A lot going on there. Now the bezel is minimized. When you look at the watch from head on, it's all dial. The dial is a matte black to resist glare, and what you really need to do is examine it closely, because the individual numerals are not printed on. They are solid inserts of superluminova. They have height, they have width, they have volume. They're incredibly beautiful at close range, and they glow beautifully at night. You'll also note the unusual choice of a telemeter, generally used for trench warfare to gauge distance based on the interaction of time, sight, and sound. Now, let me start up the chronograph. It is an El Primero. You can see it beats away at 10 beats per second in the fashion of the El Primero. All of the hands feature a handsome anthracite directional satin brushed grain. It's unique and unexpected, and it really helps to make the dial. It's a nicely composed dial with all of the elements, from the materials to the fit to the finish to the colors, superbly chosen, and the dial is nicely anchored by a date at 6 o'clock. Some will rail against the presence of a date on a vintage-inspired timepiece, but I find the choice of the Grand double-digit date to be an inspired one, as it balances the dial and provides easy access via distinctive interface to this practical information. Now, of course, it is a twin-register chronograph, so chronograph seconds, chronograph minutes with constant seconds at 9 o'clock. As with all El Primero references, it has a little bit of a quirk to it in that you set the date by pulling the crown all the way out, and then, when pulled all the way out, you turn and you cycle the quick change. The intermediate position actually adjusts the time. You'll note that the chronograph seconds hand sweeps far more smoothly than a conventional 4-beat, or I should say 4 Hertz 8-beat per second movement, as this is 36,000 vibrations per hour, or 10 beats per second. Turn it over, and you can see the 31-joule automatic 50-hour power reserve Zenith manufacturer caliber 4010. It's an El Primero. It has that distinctive high rate escapement. You can see that it also features some of the distinctive finishing traditions of Zenith. Note both blued and polished screws. Blued screws are used for adjustment of the mechanism, base or chronograph, and polished screws denote screws used for assembly and fixture of components. Beautiful golden wheels, handsome mechanical depth to the components. Of course, turn it on its side, and you have the column wheel, which you can see cycling as it interacts with the horns and levers of the chronograph system. You can see the lateral clutch right below my thumb moving in and out of engagement, and that's the real advantage of a vintage old-time lateral clutch over the more modern, more efficient vertical clutch systems. You can see everything as it operates, and thanks to the column wheel, you can feel it too. It's a sensation that you have to experience. The sound of an El Primero against the ear, the feel of its chronograph mechanism under your finger. It's worth the price of admission by itself, and rarely is it paired with a watch of such enduring beauty and unique appointment as this Pilot Big Date Automatic. See it and own it on our website.